Welcome to Worldbuilding Films, where we analyze the worlds, settings, and rules of films and TV shows to see if they work, if they don't, and if not, how they could be improved to enhance their stories. I've been thinking about world building for quite some time now, and wanted a way to be able to discuss about said topic to share with others in a constructive way. Hence the point of this channel. And frankly, the movie that started my desire to do this is Onward, the 2020 film by Pixar. I should first and foremost say that, honestly, I love this movie. No joke, the characters and plot have been handled so well in my opinion that, after a lot of careful thinking, it might have actually become my favorite Pixar film. I know, that's quite the claim, because Pixar is known for having churned out incredible classics that many people prefer over this, and because many had mixed thoughts on the ending and overall journey that the characters take. Don't worry, I'll give a spoiler warning when needed. Sure, I was already admittedly biased because I love the sheer concept of urban fantasy settings, but nonetheless, I found it to be a surprisingly deep and profound story, especially towards the end, and it easily makes me cry every freaking time. Which makes it such a pity that honestly not that many people even saw it because it came out right as the global event was happening in 2020. Still, while I will mention the plot, I'm not here to talk about that per se, because as much as I utterly adore this film, I'm the very first one to admit that it does have one major flaw: the world building. The concept and the characters are great, but I found quite a few inconsistencies and plot holes in it. And so, I wanted to share my thoughts on what specifically didn't work and what they could have done with these missed opportunities. Keep in mind that these aren't necessarily fixes that the writers had to put into the script because the story could have ended up very differently, and who knows, I might even be wrong, but I still find that it could be good food for thought, and if I manage to make my arguments clear enough, hopefully they can help you, dear viewer, with the stories you're trying to tell. But enough chit chat, let's just jump right into it. Keep in mind, from here on there will be spoilers ahead. The plot. To recap, Onward is set in a world where magic and magical races and creatures of almost all sorts have always existed. In fact, the only ones that seem to be really absent are humans, which already makes it stand out a bit more than other stories of the genre. In this world, everyone has used magic in some way or another to help with their daily lives, from fending off foes, fixing things, creating fire and shelter, etc. But magic has always been a tricky and complicated thing to master, and only a select few could do it. Thus, after what must have been millennia of this status quo, people started getting fed up with how complicated it is to use magic, and resorted to developing technology instead, which requires no training while obtaining the same results, if not more, in a faster and cheaper way. Thus, magic has been abandoned in favor of technology, and all these races eventually evolved to a pseudo-modern world much like ours. In fact, the setting of our story seems to specifically mirror Los Angeles, but magic. Now, all these races and creatures live together with cars, schools, jobs, homes, etc., and magic has been long forgotten. Or has it? In this setting, we follow Ian and Barley, two teenage elf brothers who live with their mother in a suburban home. Their father passed away when they were both very young due to an unspecified illness, affecting the brothers in different ways. Barley, the older and more outgoing one, obsesses over magic and board games, which in this world is literally inspired by their history. Ian instead is the skinny, shy one, the social outcast, who never actually got to meet his father at all, and obsesses over it by re-listening to the same tape his father recorded years prior. Everything changes the day Ian turns 16, when their mother reveals that the father had left a special gift for Ian and Barley. A wizard staff.
It's a wizard staff! Dad was a wizard! What?
It turns out, to everyone's surprise, that the father was actually a wizard and he had the rare potential for magical spells, and wizard staffs are considered to be old and rare relics. Along with the staff is also a spell that allows for the father to be resurrected for one day in order to see his family again. The brothers try it out, but something goes wrong and only the lower half of the father's body is brought back. So Ian and Barley have to venture into the big world in search for a Phoenix gem, in order to complete the spell and bring their dad back entirely before the full 24 hours run out and they miss their chance. I'll stop here so I won't give away the full ending just yet. Trust me guys, if you haven't seen it, it's completely worth it, but I will be touching upon elements of the mechanics at the end in the third act. So, now that we got the plot out of the way, let's get into the nitty-gritty details. Abandoning magic. In the same way we went from surviving on animal power, human labor on farms, and rudimentary forms of self-defense to using machines and computers to do almost everything for us, this world went from relying on magic to abandoning it in favor of technology because it has a much more convenient, cheap, quick, and easy way to use instead of years of training to cast a simple fireball. With that said, it seems weird to me that they would just abandon magic to this degree when they could have just studied it. For example, there's a shrinking and growing spell shown in the movie, which Barley uses to try and grow the gas inside of a gas tank so his Van Guinevere can continue running.
Empty.
But it says we have a full tank.
No, that doesn't work.
How can technology compete with that? Sure, the spell has a temporary lifespan, and thus it wouldn't have worked for very long as a plan anyway, but there's still a lot that could be done here. If science and technology was all the rage all of a sudden, why didn't these people take the opportunity to study magic in more detail? Maybe they could create technological devices using magic that could cause the same effect at a much lower cost, maybe even last longer, and if they succeeded, have the ability to even grow food and other resources, at least quadrupling the world's global needs and simultaneously shrinking all the waste so it wouldn't affect them as much. It would be a win-win, and yet they don't do that. Or they could have used the power of these magical staffs to literally help power entire city blocks with constant lightning strikes. Sure, there's a limit and balance to everything, but through technology they could have maybe discovered a way to optimize this. If that was the case, cars could have just been electric all along due to a very easy reliability on magically optimized electricity, with Ian and Barley not needing to stop for gas at all, and just keep going with their father's staff zapping the van into motion. It's puzzling that there isn't a legit profession of scientific magical studies or something like that, and I want that job. Hidden locations. In order to find the magic Phoenix gem, which should complete the spell to bring their father back, Ian and Barley have to go on a quest to find it. Their best shot comes when they enter the tavern of the Manticore, which is presented in an adorable way.
Is there anything else you're forgetting to tell me?
No?
Happy birthday, come join us on our quest!
And ask for the map that leads to the gem. This map tells them to first reach Raven's Point, which they eventually find out is literally a series of giant raven statues that point to a big cave filled with booby traps. That's all fine and good, a classic quest which Barley relishes in, and frankly, who can blame him? There's just one problem though. How the hell was this place kept a secret all this time? The map wasn't even that big of a secret. Hell, it was hanging in plain sight in a Chuck E. Cheese knockoff where kids could accidentally throw ketchup on it at any moment, making one think it shouldn't be that much of a big deal. Hell, Ian and Barley got lucky that the Manticore decided to just draw the map on each and every menu since that first map got burned into flames. Otherwise they would have been lost. Hell, movie prop items at Planet Hollywood have more security than this, and it holds the key to a magical, powerful item. Then comes the actual cave itself. How has it remained so well hidden in all these years? Since it developed so closely to our modern world, it seems that this universe might have also taken about, a century to develop to where it is today. Maybe slightly less if we give it the benefit of the doubt. Sure, we didn't uncover every literal inch of our world, but the few places we haven't are either literal barren wastelands or more likely incredibly thick jungles that are hard to reach even for us. Even then, with satellites, you bet that anything above ground and above cover will be seen. So, if we already have traveled and discovered most of the planet Earth by now, how did they miss such a place? It's in a valley with a few random mountains around in plain sight, and if people could travel or transport those enormous raven statues to begin with, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be that big of a deal for a car to get there either. Even the trip from LA to San Francisco is longer than this, as was almost the case for the brothers' van. Rest in peace, Guinevere. It would have made a lot more sense if it was covered in maybe, a thick forest that moved and attacked all those who entered, and was even, flame-proof at this point, where only the most skilled wizard could hope to compete with it. Or, since that would give even more reason not to abandon magic just yet in order to uncover this place, it would have made more sense if it was deep underground, so much that even radars couldn't reach low enough and figure out there was an underground cave waiting to be discovered in the first place, with only a single magical access that one couldn't see without magic. Because if this world really did have advanced modern technology and this place was in such clear view, I'm pretty sure it would have been converted into a museum or something, or at least a very easy tourist attraction.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold, the Sass Crutch!
There's also the problem that it's exposed on one end, but accessible, as we later find out, via a manhole that's in front of Ian and Barley's damn school. So if that building and whole area was built from scratch, I'm pretty sure the city planners would have noticed. Again, it was a manhole, not even a dirt hole, so clearly construction workers must have seen and worked on it at some point. Also, small side note, the same radars we use nowadays to find out what's in ancient relics would have definitely helped these people see that there was a phoenix gem located inside this fountain. The only explanation I can find is if somehow magic made it undetectable to radars and machinery, but it would need to be specified in that case. So yeah, this whole cave doesn't really make sense and needed to be hidden in a much better way, because if it had been, it would have added extra weight to the sheer importance, awe, scope, wonder, and powerful potential of this gem. Kind of like the Cave of Wonders from Aladdin. Come on, Disney, it's not like you can't rip yourself off. You've been doing it for the past several years now anyway. And by the way, the gelatinous cube could have solved even more global waste problems.
Oh no! A gelatinous cube!
Gotta love it. City layouts. Now let's talk about the everyday lives of these various races. I get that the creators and writers wanted to play with the idea of what if a magical world developed like us, and in order to play the humor aspect of this thing but fantasy, they had to not think too much about it. But there are certain details that could have been addressed. For example, we have schools, restaurants, and workplaces where all of these races tend together, but because they're so diverse, even their size can become a huge public safety issue. Like, what if a teenage troll tripped and fell on top of an elderly pixie lady? Cause let's face it, that could easily happen. Sure, they did address this here and there by having school seats be of different sizes, for example, but they could have also added, like, I don't know, lanes along the school hallways to better direct different sized people. In fact, there could have been different sized highways depending on the various sizes for different fantasy races. Biologies. There are also small inconsistencies with their biologies, quite frankly. First and foremost, the pixies. We're shown that they're small, angry, and walk on their teeny tiny little legs because their wings just don't work anymore.
Sprites can't fly! Your wings don't work because you stopped using them. You calling me lazy?
It seems like modern day commodities have helped the wings almost de-evolve over time. The problem with that is, if they're a race that has adapted to fly for what might have been millennia due to evolution, I doubt that something like a century, aka about 4 generations or so, would be enough to cause such changes, especially when it's a vital necessity to counterbalance their small sizes, especially when they're not moving in packs. And it's made all the more perplexing when they're thrown off the highway and it turns out they can just flap their wings again and they're perfectly fine. Like, ignoring if those wings are big enough to sustain flight. What, they had the potential all along and they were just lazy?
You calling me lazy?
How does that work when they need to fly in order to reach any height that isn't someone's ankles? Imagine when you were a kid and you watched superhero cartoons or movies and desperately wished to be able to fly at all costs. How badly you yearned for that, and yet these little suckers have wings, but they choose never to use them, like, ever? Not even as kids? Yeah, I definitely don't buy that. Beanstalks. Now, they're only shown briefly in the background while Ian and Barley are driving in Guinevere across the lands towards Raven's Point, just as a little fun extra detail on their journey there to make this world feel more magical. Right, cool. But these beanstalks raise a whole bunch of questions. Does that mean there are giants up there? It's clearly a reference to Jack and the Beanstalk after all. If so, are they literally living on top of the clouds? Do the clouds always stay in place to allow for them to live there, or do they move and it becomes a hazard? Are the clouds solid enough to sustain the giant's weights? Or do the beanstalks maybe pierce into some sort of pocket or alternate plane or dimension where the giants live, like in the Fables comic series by Vertigo? If so, how the hell did this entire world decide to just abandon magic altogether when there's clearly some bullshit reason as to how and why these beanstalks even function that needs to be clearly researched? And not to mention the implication of the giants themselves existing. Are they stuck up there and can't reach the rest of the world? How big are they? Are they just like twice the size of the other races, or big enough so that whenever one of them arrives, the city's emergency alarm system suddenly blasts? Hell, what if they fall into... Oh wait, right. The bottomless pit. A literal chasm, whatever, that seems to stretch for miles and miles, and as the name suggests, is supposedly bottomless. Whatever falls in there never comes back. Now, I'll admit, this is actually a really, really good scene story-wise, both because it plays really well with the relationship dynamics and character growth of both Ian and Barley, and also manages to make my hands sweat every time I watch Ian trying to traverse this with magic. But just how? Is it just so deep that they don't have the means to go down there? Like it reaches close to the core of the Earth? Or is the Earth flat and it just goes through to the other side? Man, this really is a fantasy land if people believe the planet is flat. But yeah, this raises a whole load of questions, mainly on the sheer shape of the planet at this point, as well as the consequences in weather, biology, geology, gravity, and more if it really is a bottomless pit. The main problems. There are a few other inconsistencies in the world building of this film which actually bother me in particular, but that, if addressed all at the same time, could help fix the various holes they create. So I decided to add them all in this section. The elements are the wizard staff, the rules of the magic, and, believe it or not, Colt and his car. Let's start with him, in fact. Colt is a cop, and clearly a centaur. They're half human, or at least half humanoid, since humans don't exist, I guess, I don't know, and half horse. And that second part is important because horses occupy a lot of space. Now, it's true that they address this in the movie in the form of a gag, and it's admittedly cute, with Colt barely fitting in the police car, or for that matter, anything at all. But it's baffling to me that they'd give him a regular car that's not meant for half-horse people. If centaurs exist, wouldn't they have police cars designed to fit them more properly? A regular police car wouldn't be big enough, since they also need room for a second police officer to be present at all times, as well as room to bring in potential criminals that they manage to catch. It would be highly counterproductive for a Colt to use a car not built for centaurs, but the funny thing is, they could have just easily fixed this with a simple line like, "Oh hun, that thing again?" "Yeah, budget cuts again, taxpayers' money, am I right?" But why stop there? You could even add this to his character. Now, stick with me here. What if Colt was actually careless or a slob? Sure, he loves his new family, but he didn't realize or care if he caused that much chaos indoors. Perhaps because he feels like he has enough to deal with as a police officer with high-stakes situations, and being careful at home wasn't that big of an issue. It's something that could be addressed by multiple characters through the story, even his own colleagues. It's something that even the mother of Ian and Barley would begrudgingly accept because she fears that by pointing out these issues, she'd drive Colt away, something she can't do because she already lost one soulmate. To emphasize this, maybe she tries to feel better by trying to be active with her mighty warrior workout sessions, but is clumsy at it because she has this loss of confidence. Now, later on in the story, Colt and the rest of the officers are blocked by an avalanche caused by the van slamming into a pile of boulders. Again, rest in peace, Guinevere. And have no way to continue following Ian and Barley. Now let's assume that maybe there was a bit of space to climb all the way up these boulders, and even the other officers say they can climb all the way up. Fawns do exist after all. But Colt is so confident that he says he can make it on his own. He attempts, but in his usual clumsiness causes an even bigger mess or secondary avalanche and loses the only path they could have used. He's embarrassed himself, this time a lot more because it meant losing his stepsons, who are very personal to him, and it causes him to go through the realization that, well, he is bulky, he does cause a lot of mess, and he should be more careful. He might even have to confess this to the mother on the phone, who is about to justify Colt again, but the caffeinated manticore scorns at her, and the mother finally musters the courage to tell Colt off, which adds extra salt on his wound. We then reach the climax of the film where everyone is fighting off the curse of the Phoenix Gem in the most hilarious design possible. Every time. And Colt is actually absent in the actual film in this entire scene. He reappears only at the very end. So, for this scenario, why not add him here? In the film, the wizard's staff is lost and falls into the water, never to be seen again, and Ian figures out he can grow a mere splinter of it into another full-size staff. Clever, cool, gotcha, makes sense, except there are two problems. One, we never see the staff again, ever, as if it's actually lost to sea. Except we clearly see mermaids in the intro. Can't they just fish it out? Or are they like extinct or something? Actually, no, we see one of them in the modern day in a kiddie pool, so that can't be the case. Why does it have to be lost for good? I get it that there's no time in the heat of battle, but like forever? And two, Ian can't rely on the grown splinter forever, because it was established that the growth spell has a specific time limit, yet it just stays like that for the rest of the film. That's a Cave of Wonders sized plot hole right there. So, I propose these problems can be fixed like this. First, don't drop the staff in the ocean, but maybe at the edge of a precipice that's hard to reach. Second, add an extra moment of tension with the giant splinter shrinking back at the very wrong moment while they're trying to fight off the curse of the gem. Then, when all hope seems lost, Colt arrives to save the day. He sees the staff about to fall for good in the water, and having realized how clumsy he is, he puts more effort into being careful, tiptoes with his hooves all the way there, grabs it and throws it back to Ian again. In the process, he shouts to the mother that she was right all along, and with her newfound confidence and affirmation, it makes this existing line in the film all the more meaningful.
I am a mighty warrior.
All of this without interfering with Ian and Barley's journey. In fact, it can only strengthen it, because the brothers had to go from wanting to reconnect with the past to appreciating their present. And what better way to help contrast than by showing that there were a couple more issues in this new family unit that needed fixing so they could be more at peace in it. At the end, when everything is back to normal, not only do the brothers keep the actual staff, not just a grown splinter, Colt even learned his lesson, has put a lot more effort into getting in shape so he can be more careful, to the point that he even refuses the offer of a police car built for centaurs, even though it would still be more efficient to just use the damn car, but okay, I digress. And it also strengthens this hilarious scene.
Forgot your keys.
Don't need them. I was born to run. Yeah!
Anyway, these are all the most egregious issues with the world building that come to mind, and I still hope that they may have been interesting food for thought. But honestly, while they do stand out a lot to me, they definitely do not interfere with the rest of the story and characters, which are still magnificently written. It's a beautiful story that makes you think it's about two brothers reuniting with their father, when in truth, it's about two brothers reuniting with each other. And the execution of that is great enough to eclipse any other issue the film might have. So please watch and support this film, because it deserves a lot more love than it got. Anyway, that's all for today, folks. What do you think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I talking out of my ass? Maybe. Let me know in the comments down below. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Please consider subscribing to my Patreon to help support what I do here. And if there's any other franchise whose world building you'd like analyzed, let me know. Until next time, keep building worlds.